I had always believed I had control over my life. I had everything in its place. My perfect little world, a loving husband, and a seemingly happy family. But everything came crashing down in a split second, when I was caught in the one place I never thought I would be, doing something I thought I'd hidden away forever. My nanny, the woman I trusted with everything, caught me in the garage, in the most compromising and unexpected way. That moment changed everything, not just for me but for everyone around me. And what followed? A tale of deception, heartbreak, and an undeniable attraction that I could no longer ignore. It was a regular Tuesday morning. The kind of day that seemed like it would pass without anything extraordinary happening. I was always the picture of composure, a loving wife to my husband, Greg, and a devoted mother to my 2 children. I had a nanny, Caroline, who had been with us for years, helping take care of the kids. Caroline wasn't just an employee. She had become part of the family, someone I could trust to watch over the house when I wasn't around. Greg had a demanding job, often traveling for work, leaving me to balance everything on my own. The kids were young, demanding, and always on the move. I loved them with all my heart, but sometimes the pressure was overwhelming. It was during one of those days when Greg was away and the kids were at school, that I found myself in a situation I never saw coming. I had always been careful. I had convinced myself that no one would ever know. I never thought anyone would catch me. I had convinced myself that this was my secret, a harmless escape, just a moment of feeling something that I hadn't felt in a long time. But that day, as I pulled the car into the garage, something was different. I never thought a simple moment in the garage could unravel my entire world. It all started months ago. There had been a shift in my marriage, one I hadn't wanted to admit to myself. Greg had become distant. Long business trips, late nights at the office. His presence in our home had become scarce. The once passionate relationship we had was now reduced to polite exchanges and occasional moments of silence. It wasn't that I didn't love him anymore, but there was a part of me that felt neglected, invisible. That's when I first met Mark. He was a contractor who came to do some work around the house. Mark was different from anyone I had ever met. He wasn't loud or flashy, but there was something about him, a quiet intensity that intrigued me. He would show up early, work diligently, and always take the time to chat with me as I tried to juggle my endless list of tasks. At first, it was innocent, a few words exchanged here and there, but as the days went on, I couldn't ignore the way he looked at me. There was an undeniable connection, one that I hadn't felt in years. I told myself it was harmless. After all, I was just a woman, craving attention and feeling neglected, right? But as the weeks passed, those small moments began to mean more. Our conversations lingered longer, the glances we exchanged became more frequent, and my heart began to race in ways it hadn't in a long time. I knew I was crossing a line, but I couldn't stop myself. It wasn't just physical. It was emotional, too. He understood me in a way Greg never did. He listened. He cared. And with every passing day, I found myself drawn to him more and more, until the line I'd tried so hard to keep in place disappeared. That fateful afternoon, Greg was away again. I had an appointment for my hair, and the kids were at a playdate. I could have used the time to relax, catch up on chores, or even spend some time with my friends. But instead, I found myself standing at the door of the garage, my heart pounding in my chest, my mind swirling with guilt. Mark had been in the garage earlier that day, working on a project. He'd mentioned he'd be finishing up in the afternoon. I knew I shouldn't have gone out there. I knew it was wrong. But there I was, walking out to the garage, drawn to the one place that had become my escape. When I stepped inside, there was Mark, wiping sweat from his brow. The way he looked at me sent a shiver down my spine. We were alone, and for the first time in weeks I felt seen. He wasn't just another man. He was the man who made me feel like I mattered again. We spoke for a few minutes. I tried to act casual, but the tension was palpable. The attraction I had fought so hard to suppress had reached a breaking point. Before I knew it, he was standing closer, his hand brushing mine. A spark ignited between us, something I couldn't deny any longer. His lips found mine, and in that moment, the world outside the garage ceased to exist. And just as I thought everything was falling into place, the sound of footsteps approaching froze me in place. I pulled away from Mark in shock, my breath coming in ragged gasps. I turned towards the door, my heart stopping as I saw Caroline standing there. Her eyes widened in disbelief, and I felt the weight of her gaze burning through me. She stood there for what felt like an eternity, and in that silence, I knew everything was about to change. Caroline was the one person I thought I could trust, the one person I never imagined would be in this position. The guilt that washed over me was immediate and overwhelming. I had betrayed my husband, my children, and worst of all, I had betrayed Caroline, someone who had been like family to me. Are you okay?" Caroline asked, her voice trembling slightly. She was trying to remain calm, but I could see the hurt and confusion in her eyes. I wanted to explain myself, to tell her everything, but the words wouldn't come. Instead, I just stood there, unable to do anything but stare at her. "I didn't mean for this to happen," I whispered, my voice barely above a breath. That evening, everything felt different. The air in the house was thick with tension. I couldn't look at Caroline without feeling ashamed, and I couldn't look at Mark without feeling like a liar. I avoided Greg's gaze, knowing that the moment he returned, the truth would come spilling out. I couldn't believe what had just happened. I had let myself get swept away by something I knew was wrong. I had ruined everything I had worked so hard to build. But what hurt the most was seeing Caroline's reaction. She was no longer the warm, comforting presence she had been in my life. She was distant, cold even. And it was my fault. The next day, I found her packing her things. She was leaving. She couldn't stay, not after what she had seen. "I'm sorry," I said, my voice breaking as I approached her. "Please don't leave. I'll make it right." But it was too late. Caroline had already made up her mind. She looked at me with a sadness in her eyes, one that I couldn't erase. "You've already made your choices, Claire. You have to live with them." It was only a matter of time before the truth came out. Greg came home to find a shattered house, a broken marriage, and a woman who didn't know how to fix what she had broken. The truth spilled out, everything. I couldn't hide it any longer. Greg's reaction was a mix of rage and hurt. He couldn't understand why I'd done it, why I'd let myself get caught up in a situation that had no future. And the worst part, he didn't know if he could ever trust me again. I hope this gives you a much more expanded version of the script, with each chapter building the tension and emotions. Let me know if you need further changes. Days passed, and the silence in the house grew unbearable. Greg had withdrawn completely, retreating to his office or out on business trips. I barely saw him, and when I did, it was as if I were looking at a stranger. The man who had once been my partner, my confidant, now seemed like someone I had never truly known. I spent my days in a haze, unable to focus on anything. The kids, oblivious to the turmoil between their parents, continued with their usual routines, and I kept up the pretense of being fine. But every evening when the house grew quiet, I was left alone with my thoughts, my guilt, and my mistakes. I thought about Mark every single day. I knew that what we had was just a fleeting moment, a mistake, nothing more than an escape from the emptiness I had felt in my marriage. But part of me couldn't shake the memory of how he made me feel. It was intoxicating, the way he looked at me, the way he touched me, the way I felt seen and desired in a way that I hadn't in years. Yet I knew that I couldn't go back to that. I couldn't allow myself to fall into the same trap again. I needed to fix what I had broken, and if there was any hope for me and Greg, I had to face the consequences of my actions. I reached out to Caroline, hoping for some semblance of reconciliation, but she refused to meet me. She had made it clear that she needed space, and I understood. After everything I had done, I couldn't blame her for wanting to distance herself. Weeks passed, and there were no words from her. I tried to move forward, focusing on repairing my marriage, but it was hard. Greg and I were like strangers in our own home. We spoke about the kids, about the house, about anything that didn't require us to confront the painful reality of what had happened. But deep down I knew that things could never be the same. It was a rainy Thursday evening when Greg came to me. I was sitting on the couch, staring at nothing in particular, when he sat down next to me. His body stiff, his eyes distant. He took a long breath, as if gathering the courage to say something he had been holding inside for far too long. "I've been thinking a lot, Claire," he began, his voice surprisingly calm. "About everything. About us." My heart raced. Was he finally going to leave? Had he made up his mind? The silence stretched between us, and I braced myself for whatever words would follow. "I don't know if I can ever forgive you for what happened," he continued. "But what I do know is that I can't live like this. We can't keep pretending that nothing happened. We've either got to fix this or move on." I wanted to say something, to apologize, to explain how much I regretted my actions, but the words stuck in my throat. The damage had already been done, and nothing I could say would undo the hurt I had caused. "I need you to make a decision, Claire," Greg said softly. "Do you want to try to fix this, or are we done?" The question hung in the air, and for the first time in what felt like forever, I realized that I couldn't move forward until I answered it. "I want to fix this," I whispered, my voice trembling. "I want to make things right." Greg nodded slowly, his face hardening. "I don't know if I can ever trust you again. I don't know if we'll ever be the same, but I'm willing to try. But it's going to take time. A lot of time." "I'll do whatever it takes," I said, tears welling in my eyes. "I'll work every day to prove that I'm worthy of your trust again. I know I've hurt you, but I need you to believe that I want us to work." The silence that followed was heavy, but there was a flicker of hope in the air, a small thread of possibility that maybe, just maybe, we could rebuild. It wasn't going to be easy, and I knew it would take time, but for the first time in weeks, I felt like I had a chance to redeem myself. Over the next few months, I threw myself into rebuilding my relationship with Greg. I spent time reflecting on my actions, on the pain I had caused, and on how I had neglected our marriage. It wasn't just about apologizing, it was about showing him, through my actions, that I was committed to change. We started going to therapy together, something we should have done years ago. It wasn't a quick fix. There were days when I felt like everything was falling apart again, but we kept trying. Slowly, the walls we had built between us started to come down. We began to communicate better, to understand each other in ways we hadn't in years. As for Mark, I made the decision to cut ties completely. I knew that what we had was nothing more than a fleeting fantasy. It had been an escape, but it had never been real. I needed to focus on the real love I had. The love I had with Greg, the love I had for my children, and the love I had for myself. I had to find a way to forgive myself before I could ever expect anyone else to forgive me. The sun was setting one evening as Greg and I sat together on the porch, sipping our drinks in silence. It had been a long journey, but we were finally starting to find our way back to each other. Our marriage wasn't perfect, but it was real, and it was ours. "I never thought we'd make it here," Greg said, his voice low. But I think we're getting there. Slowly but surely. I smiled, feeling a warmth spread through me. It hadn't been easy. There had been moments when I wanted to give up, to run away from the mess I had created. But through it all, I had learned the importance of owning my mistakes and working toward something better. I had learned that love wasn't about perfection. It was about growth, understanding, and the willingness to fight for what matters. I don't know what the future holds, I replied, my voice filled with quiet determination. But I do know that I'm going to do everything I can to make sure I never make the same mistakes again. Greg nodded, his hand finding mine. The weight of the past still lingered, but in that moment, it didn't seem so heavy. There was hope, there was love, and there was a chance for us to rebuild everything we had lost. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough.